All right. So, good evening, everyone. Good to see so many of you. Good to hear from all of you. Hope everyone is putting up safe and fighting Corona, as all of us are since I think 1.5, 2 years now. But hopefully, this will be over sometime soon, and hopefully, you will be able to get into one of the better law universities for that matter. Today we have got a very interesting personality. We have Kulkarni sir. Good evening, sir. Uh,
Good evening.
right, sir. And just to give all of you a brief background about Sanket, sir. So he is a pass out of Symbiosis Pune, and interestingly he's also doing his masters in business law from NLSIU Bangalore. And apart from it, he has done a lot of other diplomas in various small law. So in cyber law also he has pursued his diploma. He has published a lot of papers on arbitration. He is currently practicing in Aurangabad bench of the Bombay High Court, and he has been doing it since 2006. So of course, a huge experience in the bar, of course, and it's so lovely to just hear. I'm looking forward to hear from you, sir. The experience, of course, matters, and therefore, honestly feel that students should be able to get the exact motivation which they need to get into one of the better universities. So, welcome to the show, sir. Hope you are doing great, sir.
Thank you.
Right, sir. So, before we begin, sir, I would like you to ask how it all started for you, sir. So, at the very outset, I would like you to address this question, as in, why did you choose law in the first place, sir? Yes, sir.
First of all, good evening to everyone, and a warm welcome to all the participants. Uh, I entered into the field of law was basically I am a third generation lawyer. So my grandfather, father, everybody is in this field. So automatically my inclination from the very small age was into this law. And then I was being a tech savvy, I was very interested into computers and all these things. So while learning itself, when I was in say hardly 11, 12, how computers work and all these things. So I had learned basic this all this thing of programming and how it all works. And then after taking admission to law, I got into this specialization into this all kind of technical laws and the specialty of the cyber laws, which are the Act of 2000 was just introduced. And since I had a lot of interest in this laws, along with my LLB, I was pursuing this all this what do you say cyber laws. I learned a lot of things. I worked with various government agencies also in respect of this what do you say cyber laws, and that was the basic motivation that I had seen my father, grandfather working in this field for last many years. So naturally, most of the things came to me, and then I decided to that I should go to some of the best law schools in India. And
Right.
therefore, at that time, there were different what you say entrances. There was not this kind of common law entrance that as in we have now at CLAT. So I had been to some given some different entrances, and then I had chosen this Symbiosis Law College. Uh, it is one of the premier institutes, and then I pursued my law for 5 years, and I had done different kinds of diplomas along with this cyber law also.
And a spin-off question from what you told me would be to understand how important it is for a person to choose law if he or she is from first generation. Like, sir, I have seen a lot of people who have decided not to choose law. Why? Because they are the first generation lawyers, or they will be becoming the first generation lawyers, and they have been demotivated or rather asked not to go and pursue law, and especially join bar if they don't have any backing. So you have been a lawyer since 2006, and you have been seeing people. If you can just tell us or take us through your experience in which you have seen first generation lawyers doing well in the Aurangabad bench or wherever you have practiced, it would be great, sir.
First of all, I will say nobody should get demotivated by the just first generation lawyers. We have seen that there are many of the judges of the High Court, different High Court, the Supreme Court judges. who have been the first generation lawyers, yet they have been become the chief justice of the respective high courts. Or then we have few instances in India where the first generation lawyers have become the chief justice of India,
Right.
and they have done extremely well. So they should not get demotivated first of all. And this profession doesn't make a difference between a first generation lawyer or second generation lawyer. Maybe initially few years there is some what you say you can face some hurdles in respect of establishing yourself, but then once you have that kind of talent, once you have a knack of all such kind of things, when you have passion for your profession, I think certainly there is no limit, and law is one field where sky is the limit. I can you can take you to a new heights every day. And this what you said, opening up this various markets, the society becoming more entangled day by day, and the every sphere of life, the law has become one of the most important aspect. Now there are many more opportunities. Initially you could see that only a person after passing law, he could practice before the court, say the sessions court or the high court or district court, or at the most the supreme court. But then now there are more than avenues that have opened. Now we have a lot of law firms. We have most of the companies, they not don't even require only one, but they need a multiple of what you say lawyers. Now the most of the banks, they are hiring a battery of lawyers in respect of recovery, enforcement, the agreements. Now the most of the work of most of these companies, it is now beyond what you say the borders of the countries. They are across the continents. They have all kind of contracts and all this thing. And this internet has opened a lot more avenues in respect of law. So I don't think that this is any kind of such kind of barrier for any person to motivate
Right.
that we should feel that demotivated, that I am a first generation lawyer, so I should not enter into this field. I have some problems. I think there are now many more avenues that are open.
Right.
What you say, then most of the people, they even they take some different what you say take extra education to law, to what you say robust their resumes and their careers. They do MBA, they do CS. Law and CS is also a great demand in these times, because everything now revolves around the corporate world, and
Right.
everything happens in this corporate world. So I guess that is there should not be any demotivation for any person in respect of what you say being a first generation lawyer.
Right, right. Sir, of course, you have been in this profession since a very long time. And interestingly, you are doing your master's in business laws. So can you tell me how is your experience at NLS while pursuing your, your master's? Also, sir, I would like to know, since you are slightly experienced, how do you think a person should actually pursue his or her masters? Should it be early in his career, or should it be taken after he or she has gained some experience in the law field, sir?
Uh, I guess it depends. I will answer your first question. That in respect of national law schools, they are excellent. You can learn a lot of things from there. The professors, the teachers, the library, they are like excellent. So you can learn a lot many things. And if you have a knack of reading and learning yourself, then you can learn a lot of things. And the one more thing is that the kind of competition that people that come across the India, then you get a altogether different kind of competition you are entering into. So you also are able to judge yourself at what level you stand, what is your understanding, how well you can put your thoughts, how well you can put up in writing. All these things can be judged at an what you say at a national level. It gives you a fair amount of insight into yourself, that how good I am at this national level. So that throws and open up some new avenues for you to progress into further, and it helps say if you have a friend on national level, it makes a lot of difference. It helps also in your profession, also like getting cases and all the references, all the things. They work a lot in this field, so it, it enhances, certainly enhances your what you say knowledge, and all kind of different kind of experience.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Sir, I would also want to know, you have been a part of bar since 2006. Sir, what would be your suggestion for the current students right now who are watching us? if at all they want to join bar as litigation lawyers, what would be your advice for them to work on? Like, do you think any qualities or any attributes you should have focused had you been in 11th and 12th more, since you have been in this field for a very long time? If you can recommend or suggest something for our students so that they can work on that.
The most and the foremost thing that I will ask each and everyone is to follow is that read. You have to have put a very good habit of practice of reading. Maybe even before you're joining law, maybe it's 11, 12, or at any level from the school level. I don't say that you should read only or the school books or education stuff. You should read something else also. You should be learning a lot many things from reading. Then when you move to what you say a higher level, say 11, 12, if you are more focused, then try to read this sociological, political science and all this kind of books. They will give a lot of insight into how the system works, basically how democracy works and how we have the things in India. And when you come into law, you have a lot of judgments to read because in last 56 years, the Indian Supreme Court has given some very interesting and some fantastic judgments. Now the judgments of the Indian Supreme Court are cited across the Supreme Courts of the many countries. Now we are seeing the judgments of IR, then the right to privacy and the basic structure judgment. The judgments they are cited across the Supreme Courts in the world. So as a law student, it is not possible for your law school to teach you each and everything. So as a student, you should have interest in anything. I don't say that you should have interest in any one field. You should try to read as many as kind of this kind of judgment, variety of judgments, and you will learn a lot many principles. There are many principles, but you sometimes fail to understand in the class. So if you are read into this different kinds of judgments or what happens, I don't say if you should have read each and every judgment. Even if you follow the Supreme Court and the High Courts on a regular basis from this website or going to the websites, reading the latest judgments, you will also come to know a lot of things in respect of what you say the latest trends that are happening. Now, the one of the benchmark judgments in the Indian judiciary that has given it is right to privacy, where right to privacy was held not a fundamental right. But now the Indian Supreme Court has held the right to privacy is a fundamental right. And especially in this, what you say, the online world, privacy is very, very important. Now, even if I am, well, if some of the participants is there, if I am can able to see through his camera, email also, but we could see into their what you say screen or something like that. But then he is not knowing. So this is breaching privacy. If you can see the WhatsApp issue that the war that is waging between the WhatsApp and the government, the new rules that have been brought by the Indian government in respect of WhatsApp, Facebook, and all this thing. I think a lot of things you can learn from this. What you say, this trend that are going on.
Right, right.
Follow all these kinds, such kind of trends.
Right. So, guys, here's a heads up for all of you. Make sure you're reading, make sure you are conditioning yourself to read as much as possible, be it through the internet, be it through the newspapers, or be it through any articles which you come across, especially the legal articles which you come across on live law, bar and bench, Supreme Court cases, so on and so forth. Sir, so we have covered more or less how you went on to become the lawyer which you are today. I would want to address the elephant in the room right now. So, of course, here we are, all of us have assembled to understand cyber law in a better manner. So the first question from me to you with respect to cyber law will be with respect to the sort of crimes which happen. So what are the basic crimes, basic cyber crimes which the citizens are subjected to? So if you can throw some light on that.
Okay, now work from home has become a norm, and online payment has become a way of life now. Now nobody can say that if he is not using GPay, PhonePe, or net banking, or all these things. So the most common kind of fraud are this what you say online fraud or this money fraud that are being done. A lot of you can see it day in and day out. Then identity theft is one of the most common crime that we can see. Now you can see that many of your friends are fake Facebook profile is being made. Amount has been asked on by making fake Facebook, what do you say, Facebook accounts and all these things. So these are the most common types of it. like fake identity, then fake what is it in this money crimes in respect of making a false e-wallet wallets and then taking out money from the someone's e-wallet. These are most common crimes that are happening day in and day out. Somebody asking that I will send you some kind of what you say gift. You have to send so much of money into my account. Then you have done so and so work and you have not amount has not been paid to me and all this such kind of things. They get mails. Now even you can go a step further. The amounts have been asked into cryptocurrency and all this thing. So these are the most common type of crimes that are happening in this that are affecting the common man.
Right.
Going if you look at the corporate, then hacking. This is the most common type of crime. The hacking doesn't mean that you should go into someone's computer and just try to take some kind of information. Hacking has a very wide kind of definition has been given under the IT law. Then what you say, pornography is one of the major crimes. Then this what is related to different kind of making fake websites, fake
Right.
IDs. These
Right.
are the from a few that crime that happen very often in India, and they
Right.
have been dealt very severely. And now some few more provisions have been introduced in the IT Act 2008, where
Right.
concepts like cyber terrorism then
Right.
have been introduced. Then posting offensive, what you say, the thoughts on the internet that has been what you say made has been made illegal. These have been subsequently added, but these
Right.
are some of the very common crimes that happen across India.
Right. So, how do you go about these crimes? Now, the basic problems are being faced by common man. If I talk about the rich and affluent, they are able to find their way out through these crimes as well. Either they have a hacker by themselves, so they figure out somebody who can help them with that, or something of that sort. They basically use a lot of other wherewithals so that the crime is addressed. But what about the common man? So, for instance, there's a very interesting question by Devrat Pandey. So, last Saturday, my grandfather became a culprit of cybercrime through which fraud of 70,000 was done. Now, there are crimes like that happening in India every day. I mean, probably every minute. So, how do you go about it? Do you report it? Do you figure it out yourself? Do you try and figure out the person who has basically done this to you, or that will be more detrimental? Probably he will be able to get everything which you have. So, how do you basically address this if you are a common man?
I think the common man, first and foremost, he should try to report the complaint with the authorities, police authorities. Now we have a cybercrime.gov.in, a website that has been dedicated by the Ministry of Home Affairs for reporting this cybercrime. So anybody who is affected by this, what to say, cybercrime, he can go to this website, cybercrime.gov.in. This is the website, and there is a specific for reporting these different cyber crimes has been given. There is a difference that has been made between the pornography crimes or crimes in respect of women, has been one is a segregated thing, and the other crimes that happen, that is financial fraud and all this thing. Like the one of the person he was referring that his grandfather was cheated for yes for 70,000. And first and foremost, he should go and try to report the complaint there. And then the second thing that whenever any person is asking him to transfer any kind of money or something like that, the first thing that you should do is ask him that please provide your Aadhaar card or please provide your PAN number, and then only I will be able to transfer money to his account. So once you have this, if you ask these two documents, then 99% of the chance is that the person who is at the other end, he will vanish in a moment. He will not provide his documents. So you can say that because any amount, if you are transferring from one account to another account for any professional purpose, then if it's about 20,000, then you have to generally report it or you have to show it in your books of account.
Right.
So your safety and for the purpose of income tax or the authorities troubling you in future, it is better you ask the PAN card number or Aadhaar card number of that other person who is asking the amount.
Right.
Even if he is asking for you gift or something like that, no problem. You say you just ask him that please provide me these two details, and then you provide me the details of your bank account, including RTGS number and all this thing. Don't go for all this thing, what to say, transferring money on Google Pay and all this thing. Try to avoid. If you are doing it, do it in net banking or go to your bank, RTGS. So you will have a sufficient kind of proof to prove that this amount has been transferred. And even if you are asking some small amount, then be careful before transferring any kind of amount. Let us say below 20,000, because I guess if you're anybody is asking more than 20,000 of amount, then if you ask this two documents, then 99% of this person asking for that amount, he will vanish away, and that will prevent this fraud from you being cheated. And even if some person is genuine, and if you have his Aadhaar card number or PAN card number, then the police authorities, it becomes very easy for them to track down the person, what are his whereabouts, because now the mobile number, the bank account number, everything is attached to your Aadhaar card number. So it becomes very easy for the person to authorities to track him there and get hold of him, because even in the moment he tries to withdraw the amount, there will be intimation. Now you will have most of the people who have seen this series Jamtara that was there on the what you say different online portals. That was basically that were doing, and people were falling into prey that and basically what was done, they were trying to pay their psychological, what you say, crimes, that I say I am offering of gift to transfer so amount. So that is how they were doing. I am giving you so much and so gift. So first, always try to call your bank or your agency who has offered you the gift, and then only reveal your details, and then always try to ask such kind of details or ask them to send something like that. So it becomes easy for the authorities also to track you down. There are some numbers also given for in respect of reporting the cyber crimes. There, if there is a financial fraud, then there is a number has been given, like 15527 something is the number for giving this.
What is the number, if you can repeat?
I guess it's 15527. I'm not very sure, but you can get it on the website.
Right.
Even for your stolen mobiles, you can report the crime, and you can inform on the toll-free number that 14427 something is the number. You can report on the that if your phone is stolen or something happens, it goes to the Department of Information and Technology, what you say, telecommunication, and then they will stop your mobile phone or something using from that SIM swap and all these things.
Right. But so, sir, just to interrupt in between, and I'm extremely sorry to do that. Sir, the problem, of course, is to understand whether this will ever be solved for them or not. So for a common man, if 1 lakh rupee has been stolen through some online transaction, it is going to be very difficult for them to probably be with themselves for another 4-5 days. They will say, "Bhai, 1 lakh rupees gaye kahan hamare?" And how will we basically get them? And my question to you is it feasible, or how successful are these investigations which are done by the government? Are they enough to make sure that the money is being transferred back? Are they enough to make sure that the culprit is identified? Or is there any other way as well? So can we, of course, prevention is better than cure, and we are supposed to be very vigilant while doing all these online transactions. But as we all are witnessing right now, everything has gone virtual. So for us, PhonePe, Paytm, Google Pay are the lifeline. I cannot basically pay mantra in cash, especially when it comes to coronavirus. All of it is happening virtually, and everything has to be transferred through my mobile. My question to you is how do we go and of course that is absolutely correct when you said Aadhaar card dikhao and important identification dikhao, but sir, practically at times we tend to not have that time to just investigate or identify whether this is something which can be done to us. So my question is, one, is the method which the government is doing, so you are supposed to register a case on the website which they have given, or supposed to lodge a complaint on the toll-free number which they have given, is it enough? And secondly, how do we deal with it practically? So of course, if we cannot ask we cannot go ahead and ask every person for their identity cards. So when should we consider that something of this sort is about to happen? Is there has to be something something which will give us that rope to understand that okay, this is something which is directly wrong. This is something which is explicitly against the online rules. So how do we go about that, sir? So
I think first of all, you should be, you cannot say that cannot be vigilant. Whenever someone is asking for a high kind of amount, say 15,000, 20,000 or more amount,
right, sir.
then you should be, I guess, you should be vigilant. You should
Right,
be asking him the details. Whenever you have any kind of suspicion, then
right,
you should take your time. I think if you make amount payment of 5 10 delay, make a payment after 5 or 10 minutes. I
right,
think nobody will say that I will not accept the payment after 5 or 10 minutes. And if any
right,
person is thinking that if after 10 minutes I am not going to accept this kind of amount, I think you should decline the transaction there
ab-
and there, because it is your hard-earned money and
right,
you are required to chase that person tomorrow. So it's better that you first take it. The second question is how feasible it is. I guess technology is some wonderful thing, wonderful thing. I within 5 minutes can track down your ID. The moment if I lodge a complaint, I am able to track down your URL. Then the ID of your what we say the computer or mobile that you are trying to use, I can track down your account number. I can track down your what you say the movement where you are moving. Okay, and then I can track down the amount that are you withdrawing from any of the ATMs across India. So technology is a rather advantage, I can say. Your crimes will be solved in a fraction of seconds. The moment if you make some kind of move, the authorities get to know that what is your what is the mobile location, what was the location of that PC, who was the internet service provider, because we have many things that intermediaries now. That is what the government is trying to do with all these such kind of agencies like Facebook and WhatsApp. They are asking them to track the locations and all such kind of things. It is for in some way in your favor, because the moment you do some kind of activity on the internet, the authorities are able to track you in a flash of a second. I think for finding out the normal crime, it will take 2 or 3 days. But within 5 or 10 seconds, the person can be located, what is his exact location, and could be pinpointed. And next thing is that he has to take out the amount and all this thing. So the account number can be seized by the police authorities in a flash of a second. They immediately call the what you say the bank authorities and they ask that freeze this account for next 48 hours. By the time the local police reaches or the you can reach at that particular bank or something like that. So in a flash of second, this most of the things can be stopped and your money is safe. And I have seen in many cases the culprits have been what you say taken to task and they have been put behind the bars and the amounts being recovered quite easily. Because the mobile phones and all this thing, you could have seen that UPI scams were there or all such kind of things. Now they are
absolutely, absolutely. These have
any
become extremely common, sir.
yes,
And
now
and and, and speaking of that, sir, I also just want to add one extra question on this. Sir, how or what are the do's and don'ts when I talk about the online banking, the wallets, the social media platforms? How do we go about? So we have seen Instagram problems as well. These young kids are basically on Instagram a lot, and there are a lot of Instagram hacking wherein they get the password and the entire life is spoiled, sir. So how do we deal with all of that, sir? One is the e-wallet, the other one is online banking, and the third one being the social media channels. So Facebook may hacking, or Insta pe hacking, yes, Snapchat, all of it. How do we deal with it, sir?
first and foremost, always have a very good password. Don't have a weak password. Have say small case, uppercase, a special character. All such kind of things should be in your password. Second is don't make your password very obvious. Like if you are say log read your date of birth, your place of town, your mother's name, all such kind of things they should be avoided as a password. Some very different passwords should be used. There should be a use of special characters and lowercase, uppercase, all such kind of things should be added to your password. Second is don't you make your one password a universal password. वही पासवर्ड अपना बैंकिंग के लिए भी और वही पासवर्ड सोशल अकाउंट्स के लिए भी ये ऐसा कभी मत करो उसको you should have a different kind of password for all kind of different channels. Your banking password should be very secure and you should not use it anywhere else, and especially this social networking sites where they are susceptible to being hacked and all these things, because these software security layers that are being used by the banks, they are very strong. So anything happening from your bank is very difficult, and this may happen from what you say this Instagram or Facebook, all such kind of things. Second is change your passwords regularly. Then once in a while log out from all the old devices that are being generally we change the phones and all such kind of things. So try to log out from all the old devices. Then if you have any suspicious friend on your this links also in your social accounts, then immediately delete them. Don't unfriend them, because you tend to see that you sometimes in your heat of movement try to click and accept some of the friends. Remove all such kind of things. Don't make unnecessary friends on such kind of things, because they are going to ruin your life one day. So it's better we take some kind of precaution. So these are the basics. Always have some very good antivirus software on your phones, on your what you say PC, on your tablet. So they will also save you a lot of things. They will also alert you this website is not trusted, or someone is trying to hack into the system, or someone is trying to move into your account or PC something. They are going to also alert you. So try to use all such this basic kind of things. I think if you take this follow basic things also, then you will be protected quite a lot. They will
Right.
not try to what to say directly try to harm you. So these are
Right.
the things that you have to read. And even if you go on this cybercrime.gov.in, you can see a lot of do's and don'ts there they have given, that what you have to do, where you have to click whenever you find a suspicious link, someone giving out you some freebies, all these things. Don't try to click on such kind of clicks from your mobile. Avoid such kind of clicks. Go to the website of that say you nowadays get Amazon offering you so many kind of free so and so.
Okay.
But always go to the Amazon website and check whether they are really giving such kind of thing. And if they are not giving, then don't click on such kind of links. Be very suspicious about such kind of links,
Right.
because they are the main source of taking away the data. Because I can, even if you provide me a 1 second window to enter, you click on a link, I can within fraction of second try to get your entire WhatsApp data or such kind of data into my computer. And I can keep on spying day in and day out what you type, what message you send, what are the passwords that you put to e-wallet and all such kind of things. So you should
Right.
be careful, change your passwords regularly, and don't use very obvious passwords.
Right, sir. Also, sir, if you can elucidate on the kind of punishments which these hackers or the online thieves are given, that will be great. So that will give us a basic clue of what are we dealing with, and is there any a strong government regulation against these people or not? So if you can throw some light on that.
Starting with your basic, for most of the offenses, the punishment ranges to 3 years of imprisonment.
Right.
Then for pornography, the punishment goes to 5 years on the first attempt.
Okay.
If you do such kind of offense, it moves to 10 years. Then for cyber terrorism, the punishment is life. You will be put into jail. And
Okay.
I'm saying that cyber terrorism is something that you should be very fearful of that, because I will give a small example that how your life can be ruined for a moment. Now, most of you, if you are sitting in some kind of same computer or something like that, your mouse is there, you have kept your same mobile in front of you, you are listening to my lecture. Okay, you have some kind of toddler or something, or you have just kept your mobile rested on some thing. Your something comes, your mobile may fall, your something may fall on your mouse or something like that, or even for a moment you go to open a door, the bell rings on your door, and you press your mouse, what you say, computer is on, and something falls upon, say, on your mouse, and then it gets like, if you like what you say, post on Facebook which says he so and so leader of this country is mad, or he is hateful, some there is hateful slogan against him. So what will happen? You will land 3 years into jail when you are, even if you are not like the post. It has been, what you say, accidentally like the post. You didn't like the post. Something, your book may fall, your some cousin may come, your parents may come, just try to move your mouse or something like that, and they unknowingly they may click the, what you say, the left hand button of your mouse, and that way what may happen, you may be clicking some kind of wrong post, say on Facebook or say some Instagram or something, and that may land you for a jail, a minimum of 3 years, or in some cases up to 10 years also. So you have to be very very careful.
And what are the regulations we are talking about, sir? If you can name these cyber crime regulations.
This is IT Act 2000. They
Right.
have all such kind of things. This IT Act was amended in the year 2008, and
Right.
this new amendment were brought to this IT Act, and more stringent punishments are there. And now the one of the punishment is in what you say, monetary form also. If you are hacking into someone's data, now hacking doesn't mean in literal sense hacking, taking into, if you have published a photo and what do you say, lessen the quality of your photo also, that will also amount to hacking. Okay, so uh, for that there is a 1 crore rupees of fine that you have to pay in the court of law if you are proved guilty for the offense. So
Right.
up to 1 crore rupees you will be required to pay. So 1 crore is not a small amount that you will be required to pay. And it starts from minimum of 2 lakh rupees to up to 1 crore rupees. That is the fine that you are required to pay.
Right, sir. So I would also want you to explain two basic things. What is a cyber murder? And as you were mentioning cyber terrorism, if you can explain it again, sir.
First, coming to your question, the cyber terrorism. Now, cyber terrorism is like you have seen that many youths across the country, they are asked to join certain kind of organization. They are asked to, what you say, put some kind of hate speeches on the internet in respect of certain person. Now, if you say there are elections in your locality or something like that, or your constituency, so what I will do, I will push some anti-inflammatory post against that person. Then anything that will create a clashes between two different societies or two groups of the societies. Then doing waging a war against your country, asking for funding for some anti-Indian organization or this extreme organization, all such kind of things. This all will be come under cyber terrorism, doing intentionally with the intent to, what you say, cause harm to your country. So it may be how it's small it may be. Even if you are just forwarding your emails to from I think you are acting as an intermediary, just forwarding, getting email from one person and forwarding to some other person. Then also you are what you say, committing such kind of cyber terrorism. Now coming to your next question, that is cyber murder. Now this is a very interesting thing. Now what is happening now in this happened say some 15-20 years ago in United States, where the first recorded cyber murder was there. Now in there is a medicines are given online to the patients. Okay, because visiting the patients is not that easy in US, or getting appointment with the doctor is not that easy. So the medicines are prescribed to the patients by online prescriptions. So what I do is I change the prescription, the 20 mg tab into say 200 mg tab. So the probably the center will also not know, the receiver also will not know that the mg of tab has been changed. But if you take a 200 mg tab instead of 20 mg tab, then it is certain that the person, the patient will have some kind of effect, and in some in cases he may also die. And this is the recent thing that you said, that this online medicine, phone medicine, that WhatsApp chat पे जो medicine करते हैं patients को, if I am going to intercept your message and I am going to change the tablets, say instead of this some of the famous tab that are taken, instead I put some wrong tab. I don't know what kind of tab your doctor has suggested. Then if you take a wrong pill, that may even cause to death. And there are officially recorded 20 cyber murders in world. There are officially that have been recorded, and there may be many more in coming times. You don't know also.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So that was a lovely insight of all the cyber law related crimes and the things which are involved there. Sir, just one last question. This is with respect to, of course, the recent issue which we have witnessed, and all of us are slightly worried. What will happen if we don't have any social media channels? So, if you can just go ahead and talk about the importance of social media channels, and is there a possibility of them being shut down completely? So that is also gaining traction in terms of the messages. So there's a lot of dissemination of false messages that all the social media channels might be ended and all of that. So if you can address this issue, whether that is something which can happen or cannot ever happen, and the importance of social media channels as such.
I think your liberty and your expression of thought is one of the most important aspects of the Indian Constitution. So taking away your one of the forms or platforms of taking away liberty to speak something, or right to freedom, which is a fundamental right as per the Indian Constitution, that will be, I think, very harsh. I think government cannot take such kind of step. But at the same time, these intermediaries like the social networking websites or the apps like the Facebook, Instagram, and all such kind of things, they also are required to disclose certain things to the government also. Because if anyone is sending some wrong messages, making wrong use of this social platforms, because if you use, even if you say use say Twitter, there are many wrong handles are there which they put some wrong content. Even I will say that you can find a pornographic content. So you should first go and report to the government and ask the what you say these social handles to shut down this pages or a Twitter handles or what you say Instagram pages or like this. In the very beginning of my career, we had there was a Orkut, if you can remember in 2000.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of my friends was this. There were anti-India web posts were put on this Orkut pages were there. So
Right.
one of my friend who was very enthusiastic, he had filed a public interest litigation. For him, I had helped in, and then we had got this pages removed from this Orkut at that time. The Bombay High Court had directed them to remove certain pages which were against the country, where the flags were shown, the Indian flag was shown to be burning, and all such kind of things were there. So the balance has to be there. Complete shutting down is not a complete solution, but then they have to sit and negotiate it out. Because there is one issue that right to privacy has been held to be a fundamental right, but then the government has asked that who is the originator of that message is to reveal to the government. So that looks very difficult as of now, because that will very breach the very fundamental thing that which WhatsApp is given end to end what you say privacy. But
Right.
then they have to find some kind of golden mean. And second thing is that this applies to only a platform which has more than 50 lakh active users. So only this giants which are there, they will be facing some kind of issues. But then that they cover most of our issues. But this issue that have been what you say notified by the government in February 2021, they have got intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. In some form, that is also correct, because the government had also a responsibility of looking after its citizens, their
Right.
well-being, and there is a peace in the societies where they're one of the duty, and maintaining, keeping the citizens away from all such kind of things is one of the basic duty of the government. So in
Right.
a way, the government is also right. You cannot blame completely also, but there are not that all handles are not what you say from the country, or all pages are not within the country, they are
Right.
outside the country. So whenever there are pages which are outside the country, then certainly the right of the government is they are correct at their place in banning all such kind of things. But then some solution will be required to be brought out by the government also, and they have to give them some time to make changes to the rules also, and to these networking sites also.
Right.
So,
Sir, a very interesting question has been asked by Sachetan. Now, we all see how WhatsApp writes end-to-end encrypted. So, if you can tell us how it all happens. So, if is it really safe to sort of communicate or share any private data with anyone on WhatsApp? Is it really end-to-end encrypted, or is it something which they just write for the sake of it? So
No,
that.
the data on WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. That is true. But what happens the moment you download the data, it goes into your memory, and the moment the data goes into your memory, say there is some intimate photo that you have in your, so you send it to your friend or something like that. The moment you download that photo, what happens? The inbuilt thing that is there, or the photos or something like that, is app upload it to your what you say into that its own account, your account, the Google account. Say you are say abc@gmail.com. So the moment you download the photograph, it will be automatically uploaded to the cloud of your that of that abc@gmail.com. So you
Okay.
will see that you will find all the photographs automatically uploaded to your what you say Android phones. It doesn't happen with most of the what you say other Apple or something. They take permission, but in this Android phone that we use, this data is automatically uploaded to these clouds, different
Okay.
clouds. Let's say you have the given 15 GB of data, free of what you say the storage space. So you will find all your photographs. You will, whenever you open your mobiles, you see that you can see what happened 2 years ago. It shows you your memories and all this kind of thing. So I think the Google has all your data. What happened 2 years back, 3 years back, the moment you download it. So the problem starts when you download in your mobile. So you should be able to put switch off the history, uploading all this kind of things should be gone into, and they should be stopped there. hacking isn't that easy into such kind of this app because they are international apps. They have also credibility issue with them because if I can hack or any layman can hack into say WhatsApp or something like that, then it will bring bad image for them also. So and then second thing is that whenever you use your WhatsApp web, all this thing, you should be very careful that you log out from that. Your the QR code that is generated, that is not copied from. Even if you give a mobile for 1 second to me, what I will do, I will just go and into your what you say settings of your WhatsApp, and I will just copy your QR code. All your messages will be coming to me also. I can just keep a tab on. Just I am like your parent, I will be able to keep a tab. So by handing over your mobiles and all such kind of things, even for a second to your friend also, you shouldn't think about it. You should put a very strong password, say pattern locks, their fingerprint locks, all such kind of things. Then only you should do your thing. But then end-to-end encryption is there, is quite good. But there are certain policies of the this social media platforms also, which may harm in you in future, which are they introduced by the WhatsApp, but
Right.
they have postponed it for some time. But there are certain causes which may harm you also.
All right, sir. Yes, sir. So it was superbly informative, and it. I hope it helps all of the viewers who are watching us. I would like to take a few questions. So if you guys can go ahead and take up the questions, as in write the questions on the chat box, it will be really great. I have a few questions on in the Q&A section. So yes, a very interesting question by an anonymous attendee is when private pictures of some minor are leaked or screenshotted and later circulated, how does the minor go and seek help from law?
I think the moment the minor is there, I think for a minor it will be very what do you say, knowing the procedure of law. So anybody who is looking after the minor, so most of the cases his parents or his immediate friend like uncle or somebody, he should take that person to the police station and he should immediately lodge an offense in respect of that. Even on the cybercrime.gov.in, there is a separate tab that has been given for this such kind of offenses where you have to just put the details or such kind of thing, and then the law will take its course. You may have seen that there was certain last year something that could have happened in respect of the same in one of the schools in Delhi, and there was a lot of buzz on the internet in respect of that photos and all this thing on the Instagram and all this thing. So the moment you come to know anything, you should report it to the police at least first go to help you. And now there are many, what you say, the website also which give an option to delete. You can make a request to that website that you please delete this photograph. Okay, because there are many what to say pornographic websites which run legally also in that their country, but then they are subjected to what you say registration and all these things. But then even if you come across, there is an option that asking that you ask them to remove, and if you the moment you make a request, they immediately remove it within 24 hours from their website also.
Right.
But in India, you should go to the police at the first go.
Right, right, sir. So there's an interesting question by Rohit Dongde. He asks, is ethical hacking covered under cyber law? So is it a provision under the IT Act 2000?
Uh, Literally speaking, it is not yet covered. But ethical hacking is only done by a person who is known to the organization generally. Say if you are a private company, then ethical hackers they are themselves what to say ask their ethical hackers to test their website. Okay, so they kind of there is a permission that has been given, but technically speaking, as of now, in Indian law doesn't permit them really ethical hacking.
Right. Sir, also very, of course, we all know how cryptocurrency is taking the world by storm. So how relevant and how important and how legal is cryptocurrency in India?
The RBI doesn't accept the cryptocurrency, but the Supreme Court just has a Supreme Court judgment. If you see last year, it has said that cryptocurrency cannot be banned in India. Therefore, as of now, until there is no law that is being brought by the government, the cryptocurrency is legal. Okay, but then the Reserve Bank of India is trying to put certain kind of what we say locks, preventing people from going into because it is highly unregulated. You don't know who your money is being taken. So it is for the person to decide whether he has to go for that. But then, as of now, it is not illegal. But the moment there is some kind of law, and if it is made illegal, then you cannot deal into the cryptocurrency.
Right, sir. Okay. Let's take a few questions now. Yes, sir. Okay, a very interesting question by Tanisha Bharadwaj. Now, how do you go ahead with resolving the cyber law crimes? So, is there now, of course, arbitration and everything is there, which is out of court settlement. So, is it allowed in cyber law?
In respect of like settlement.
Yes, sir.
When crime is against a society, then it is not permissible.
Right, sir.
Okay, like it is a crime against a woman or against a child, then it is certainly law will not permit. Even if the person who has been affected and the person who has committed the crime, okay, then the accused, even they both decided we should amicably settle our issues, but the government or the courts will not permit you to settle such kind of issues because they go against the health of the society. So such kind of offenses may not be permitted. But there are some, if there is a say economic offense or something like that, or offenses registered out of say some misunderstanding or something like that, that can be done by through court of law. You can settle them amicably between yourselves.
Right, sir. So Rohit asks another interesting question. What is phishing, and how do we know that the generated email for job promotions, etc., are fake or real?
I think first of all, the phishing is like making a proxy website of the what do you say the original company or something like that. Now you find out most of this there are many minor differences are made. So before giving any kind of sensitive information to anybody, say like PAN card or Aadhaar card number or copy to the photo on this email, I think you should be very what is circumspect before for what purpose they are asking the information, and then only by you should call them and then you should verify them with the company that whether you have asked the information or not. And I will ask that you should verify from the mobile numbers or the numbers given on the website and not given in the email. And then only you share any kind of data. But then before, I think only sharing a resume will not be able to say affect you. But then sharing some kind of different data may affect you. But you should be very careful also that you should go and see whether it is opening or not, or whether there is an opening that has been given on multiple websites like the job portals. Then only you should apply for that. But
Right, sir. So Kashvi asks, how can we learn ethical hacking? And is there a formal degree? How does it all happen? So if you know about anything about ethical hacking.
you should have basically a lot of technical knowledge in respect of how the things work in a computer, how data is transmitted from my end to your other end, how it works. Then only you can. There are many courses that are offered. They are generally called as a white hat hackers and black hat hackers. They are called, and there are many courses online where you can learn all such kind of things. They are provided, but then provided you use it for a proper thing and not for wrong things. Even if you commit one mistake, knowingly or unknowingly, you become a what you say black hat hacker or illegal hacker. So you have to be very careful while doing such kind of things.
Right, sir. So just the last question for the day. Of course, this is a topic which is extremely relevant, and we somehow dealt it in a brief span of time in the session itself. But if you can explain what exactly is cryptocurrency and how is the world looking at it? So, how, of course, we know how much Elon Musk has been investing in it, making stocks soar, be it in crest or be it in trough. So a lot of things have been happening. So if you can briefly explain what exactly is cryptocurrency and what is the way forward, sir.
Cryptocurrency is basically it's data mining and blockchain, use of blockchain. If anybody knows about these two things, they can Google it and they can find it out that how does this blockchain works and what is data mining. Because the cryptocurrency generally generated by data mining. Even the Indian companies like TCS and Infosys, the top companies, this they provide hardware for storing the data for what to say support for storing cryptocurrencies. Okay, so in many countries, in some of the countries, it is legal, but only problem with the cryptocurrency is that you don't cannot fasten a liability. Say if you invest 1 lakh rupees and your 1 lakh rupees becomes zero, you cannot hold anybody liable because it is your hard-earned money. You should think twice before investing any amount. But basically, on these two basic concepts, it works cryptocurrency, that is blockchain and data mining. And this on these two things the entire thing works and the value is decided by investing amount in different kinds of projects and all these things. There are many interlinked things and how it is works. But then you should know that Bitcoin, they also vanish after a certain period of time. So your Bitcoin also, they reduce also after certain time, and therefore the value increases. But then if your Bitcoins are lost, you cannot hold anybody liable, because there are number of servers across the world which are working. Say one server is in Singapore, one is in Europe, one is in America, one is in next to your house. Anywhere the server, there are many servers, and they are in tandem. They are working for this data mining and for this blockchain purpose. So you cannot really hold anybody liable for that. So without regulation, you should be very circumspect going into that.
All right, sir. All right, sir. It was lovely to hear you speak on so many aspects. We covered more or less everything related to cyber crimes, and hopefully, all of us have something to take from this session. And I'm pretty sure all the students have liked the session amazingly well as well. So it's we will be winding up the session. It's a very hearty thanks from the entire team of IMS and all the students. It was lovely to hear you speak, and I wish you all the very best for your future, sir.
Thank you very much, and best of luck to all the students who are happening for the class this year.
Right, sir. All right, guys, if you can just go ahead and give us your feedback on the chat box, it will be great for us to understand how the Ignite sessions are going. How do we improve? What else do you want us to cover? So any feedbacks which you want to write, please write down on the chat box. It will be more than, we will be more than happy to take your suggestions. All right. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much, sir. Again, it's a pleasure to just hear you speak. It was a very fascinating topic, and it was a very interesting topic. So I hope all of have something to take to our home today. And it was just lovely to hear everything related to cyber crimes, sir. So thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.